Where are you on the deterrence without escalation?
Well, I agree with the former ambassador's analysis. I think, first of all, my starting point is that an atrocity has been committed, particularly having heard the World Health Organization's views today that their partners on the ground do believe chemical weapons were used that killed 43 people. I think the West does have to act. We can't allow women and children to be murdered with chemical weapons and stand aside and do nothing. But I agree with the ambassador's analysis. We need to be carefully targeted in how we take that action to avoid escalation by pinpointing the Syrian military assets that either manufacture or deliver these agents. By being very precise, I think we can avoid the risk of escalation.
Would you tell the Russians? Because one option is to say to the Russians, look, this is where we're going to strike, so get your planes and people out of the way so you don't get caught in it.
Well, I'm not sure I'd necessarily go that far. If we're striking chemical weapons facilities, and the Russians would be well advised to stay away from those. But the important point to make is this is not about retribution or punishment. It's about two things. It's about degrading the Syrian government's ability to manufacture and deliver these weapons. And secondly, it's about deterrence. And it's very noticeable that after we failed to act in September 2013, there were a period of years when Assad did use chemical weapons, but about a year ago, the Americans took very limited action, and for a period of 12 months, the last 12 months, there were no chemical weapons attacks. So I think this deterrent point is incredibly important.
Right. Mr. Khalilzad, what do the... are you scared of escalation in a bigger Cold War, or with hot flashpoints between Russia and the US? Do you think we should be scared of that now? There are really quite a lot of fronts on which there is conflict between these two.
I think that one has to be concerned about the potential for escalation, and therefore one has to go the extra mile to make it clear to Vladimir Putin that the objective of the strikes is degradation and deterrence, as the Member of Parliament said, and that the US does not intend to get involved otherwise in Syria and does not want to challenge the position of Russia in Syria. That puts then the burden on Russia, on Putin. Does he want to risk a conflict with the United States, given what the US message is, that the purpose is deterrence of use of chemical weapons.
The Russians and the Syrians are actually unlikely to actually be deterred, aren't they? Because for the Syrians, this is existential, and the Russians are not going to see it as being a serious strike against them personally. So in the end, it's not going to deter.
I don't know whether the strikes that the US will carry out, if it is focused on deterrence, would be existential. The balance of power in Syria has changed significantly in favor of the regime, and the Russian position is relatively strong, given that it also has the Iranian support there. But I think President Trump has played a game of chicken with Mr. Putin. He has thrown the steering wheel out, saying, we're coming, and now it's up to him to escalate or to stay out.
Right.
And for staying out, the message is, we're not going to change. We're not going to change the situation on the ground dramatically, and we're not going to come after you. So I think there is a way that it could work, but of course Syria is the most complex, the most complex, and there is a risk that things can get out of control.
Let me just put last one to Chris Philp. It looks like the British are on board for this, and I don't recollect there being a vote of Parliament to sign up to that.
Well, of course, we need to wait and see what decisions both the French, the Americans and the UK government take in the coming hours and the coming days. But this idea about a vote in Parliament, clearly it's desirable that Parliament has a chance to debate this, but sometimes events on the ground move very fast and it simply isn't possible. And this idea that we have a vote before action is a relatively recent one. It happened in 2003 with Iraq and again in 2013 and 15. But historically we haven't had votes. I mean, you know, we declared war on Germany in 1939 without a vote in Parliament. And I think if there is a fast-moving military or diplomatic situation, you wouldn't want to circumscribe the government's ability to manoeuvre by requiring a vote.
I wonder whether you would win the vote, because the Democratic Unionists voted against action in 2013. They hold the balance of power at the moment.
It's true they did, but a number of Conservative MPs, like Andrew Percy, have made clear that although they voted against before, they would potentially vote with now. And quite a few Labour backbenchers, many of whom, of course, did vote for action against Daesh in Syria in December 2015, like Ruth Smith, for example, have indicated they would be open to supporting it. So I wouldn't make any assumptions about the vote.
Chris Philp, thank you very much.